What's going on, everybody? This is NYG Jeffy T 3285. I hope everybody is enjoying your Thursday morning so far. And I'm just going to go over a quick recap of some of the trades that the New York Mets have made, some of the moves that are going to benefit their team, as well as some of the moves that they didn't make that might end up hurting their team going into the rest of the second half of the season, and then obviously leading towards the playoffs as we get closer and closer to the beginning of the playoffs in about a couple of months. Now, the New York Mets, we all know the types of moves that they needed to make at around the trade deadline. We know they needed to add a little bit more power to the middle of their lineup, as Pete Alonso has really been the one source of a power hitter through the middle of that lineup from the Mets the entire season so far, as well as Francisco Lindor has done a pretty solid job. But as much as we like guys like Mike Canna, Starling Marte, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Eduardo Escobar, Luis Guillorme. These guys have all done their part so far, but they're not really known as like big-time power hitters. And the New York Mets were looking for another power hitter in the middle of that lineup to try to give Pete Alonso the type of protection that he needs so that pitchers would be able to pitch around him. Well, the New York Mets did at least add a couple of bats at before the trade deadline, obviously, when they added guys like Darren Ruff from the San Francisco Giants. They added Daniel Vogelbach, who actually had a grand slam yesterday, his first big home run for the New York Mets yesterday, when they acquired him for the Pittsburgh Pirates about a week ago. They also added Tyler Naquan from the Cincinnati Reds, who's pretty much going to be their fourth outfielder going forward after he's going to be replacing Thomas Jankowski, and with a little bit more offensive punch for that New York Mets team as their fourth outfielder. And obviously they added Michael Perez as depth for the catching position, with James McCann, as well as Tomas Nido. And they still have a young catching prospect, Francisco Alvarez, going forward. But I thought the New York Mets didn't exactly add that power-hitting, middle-of-the-lineup guy that could consistently be that threat over the middle, as they did have interest in guys like J.D. Martinez, Wilson Contreras, C.J. Cron, but they weren't able to pull off a trade, as all those teams were looking for one of the Mets' top prospects, and the Mets were unwilling to trade away some of their top prospects to the opposing team, so a trade never materialized going forward. As well as they also needed some help with the relief pitching department. Now, while they did get a relief pitcher before the end of the trade deadline, when they picked up Michael Givens from the Chicago Cubs, who's going to give them another arm in the middle of that relief staff from the right-handed side, the New York Mets did need to get some help on the left-handed side of the relief pitching. And they have right now guys like David Peterson and Joel Rodriguez, who are going to be the left-handed specialists for that middle of the relief bullpen issue. But the problem is Joel Rodriguez has not been doing well so far and has a career ERA right now of over 4 when it comes to his middle relief help, and David Peterson has been struggling since he's been transitioning to his role as a reliever going forward. So it's not a really strong thing to have right now going forward with the New York Mets when it comes to the middle of their relief. And I think they definitely could have made a trade. They were interested at the time in Andrew Chafin, the reliever from the Detroit Tigers, and they looked like they could be able to swing a trade with Detroit to pick up Chafin and put him in there as a left-handed specialist for the New York Mets bullpen, but they never were able to swing a trade. So the New York Mets are pretty much going to be relying on guys like David Peterson and Joel Rodriguez in the middle of that relief pitching for the New York Mets. So I don't know how confident I feel in that. I'm still very worried about the bullpen. I'm sure Mets fans alike are very worried about that bullpen going forward, because you're still relying on a bunch of guys that hopefully can be able to stay healthy and be able to contribute, like Trevor May, Seth Lugo, Joel Rodriguez, now Michael Givens. You have David Peterson that's going to be coming in. You're trusting on a lot of guys that have been inconsistent right now outside of Edwin Diaz to be good middle of the relief pitchers for your team going forward. So I think the Mets should have added at least 1 or 2 more bullpen arms along with Michael Givens. Obviously they didn't do that, but they must have faith in the guys they have right now that they're going to be able to get the job done. Now, in terms of the outlook for this team going forward, I think obviously the biggest key for the New York Mets is going to be their starting pitching. And Chris Bassett had himself a very strong pitching game yesterday as he pitched at least 7 innings, giving up 6 hits and no runs. So it's all going to depend on what they're going to get from those starting 5. And when the starting 5 is healthy, they're good. Jacob deGrom looks strong in his first start coming back. Max Scherzer has looked great. Chris Bassett has been pitching much better lately. Carlos Carrasco has been pitching much better. And Taijuan Walker has arguably been the second best pitcher on the New York Mets so far this year behind Max Scherzer. So the New York Mets starting pitching is going to be the major key for this team going forward. And they're going to have to make sure that the bullpen does not wilt when it gets down to like the major part of the second half of the season. Obviously when we get towards the playoffs. And the lineup has to be steady too. You're going to have to get those key hits from the lineup going forward. And that's including guys, that are going to have to be able to drive in runs and eventually, build up the power department going forward. So, while I don't love the fact that they didn't add more bullpen help and they didn't get a consistent power hitter in the middle of that lineup, I mean, guys like Darren Ruff, Tyler Naquan, Daniel Vogelback, they're going to be able to be solid DH players. Like, I think Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff are going to be guys that are going to be taking over as like switch platoon DH guys for that team going forward, and Tyler Naquan's going to be able to be that fourth outfielder. But I still think they still needed to get a big-time power bat that's going to be a consistent threat in the middle of that lineup. But overall, I mean, I think the New York Mets did get stronger in terms of like building up the depth of their roster, so I can't complain about that. But we have to see how the bullpen's going to do going forward because it's still a major question mark. And you're putting a lot of faith in guys that right now haven't shown that they can be consistent guys going forward. So we'll have to see how the New York Mets bullpen is going to shape out the rest of the season, as well as if their starting pitching can be healthy and continue to pitch as well as it has so far at the beginning of the season, as well as we're going to have to see how the lineup continues to go going forward. But it's encouraging signs. The New York Mets are at least right now 3.5 games up on the division, with now they're going to be having the Atlanta Braves coming in. So this is going to be a major series that's coming up right now, as the New York Mets are going to have to try to play great baseball and distance themselves from the Braves for that NL East divisional lead, and not choke up and then have the chance for the Braves to get back into and possibly take control of that division. So it's going to be a very fun series, very key. And the New York Mets just have to continue to play good baseball going forward. So that's just my little thoughts right now on the New York Mets in terms of the trade deadline. What moves I wish they made, some of the moves I liked, some of the moves I wish they could have made, and also the outlook going forward for the New York Mets and for the rest of the 2022 Major League Baseball season. So if you liked the video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYG3285 for more breaking news, updates, and chatter surrounding the New York Mets, Brooklyn Nets, New York Giants, WWE Wrestling, as well as food for thought. Share your comments below on what your favorite move the Mets made during the trade deadline and your outlook for the New York Mets going into the rest of the 2022 Major League Baseball season. And turn on the bell for notifications on the next video or short that dropped surrounding the New York Mets. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Thursday. Take it easy and let's go New York Mets. And always know you got to believe in those New York Mets.